Okay, things are changing so fast that that nobody really knows what's going on in the sense of where are we actually heading with this. So there's huge answered questions, and I'd really like to know how the other presenter kind of came up with his answers. So I'm waiting till 10 o'clock to actually start talking, because that's what we used to do. So, well, while we're here though, I just want to kind of take a chance to like ask you, like, what's been like really interesting to you that's kind of concerned in the area of like computers and artificial intelligence and stuff like that. Yeah, what have you been kind of experiencing in your lives that's really interesting to you? It really makes you think.
My lack of ability to remember passwords anymore.
Okay, yeah, yeah, I think, I totally get you, and like, do you find yourself using the same password over and over again?
I can't tell you that.
We can't tell you that, okay. Yeah,
Dan, I'm Chuck Murphy. I don't know.
hi Chuck, yeah,
2 weeks ago, I was teaching a class called "It's the Way to Go, a Well-Planned Exit Class." So in my pre-class survey that I send out, somebody asked the question, totally off topic. I have a lot of trouble with passwords, managing passwords and all the rest of this stuff.
Okay, Dan, I'm
And I
gonna
passed
point
it off
this
to
just
you.
kind of in that direction.
Okay.
So you have a little more room
Yeah.
to roam.
sounds good.
Okay,
2 weeks in,
all
I
right.
spent a whole bunch of time and just yesterday published a 14-minute YouTube video on the way that I manage my passwords. So that
Okay,
all you do
so
is-
because I hit the video panel,
Uh-huh,
you won't be able to see anybody in the Zoom waiting room.
okay,
The link
So-
to YouTube-
But yeah, I'm gonna be in there, monitoring for all that kind of stuff. If somebody has a question,
Anybody else?
if they just can't move forward and until they get some kind of clarification, I'll just try a gentle interruption,
okay,
which will just be my voice coming in through the.
okay, yeah, and kind of the presentation or discussion format I'm wanting is people just asking questions whenever they have, them, right? So yeah, so please today, please don't be shy about breaking in with a question whenever you've got it. All right, because this is just such a cool topic and so interesting that we've gotta let ourselves think. And I wanted to kind of speak to that thing about can't remember the passwords. Kind of to me, like the key word here is memory, right? Like that's my biggest issue with getting older is I can't remember stuff. And so I'm more and more dependent on computers to remember stuff for me, right? If it weren't for my calendar program,
Excuse me.
I'd be lost. I don't know where I was supposed to be, all right? So the kind of short answer to the big question, right, which we're going to be getting to. The big question is how are we going to deal with this new creation that's getting so powerful and so smart, right? The short answer is we've got to work with it. Right? It's like the optimistic answer is saying this is just another tool. Right? Humanity has long since gone away or transferred from being a biological species like any other species. We're now a species plus our culture and our technology. Right. And so a lot of us couldn't even be here if we hadn't had like medical technology to save us when we had some illness earlier on. Right. So we have to basically figure out how to use this new technology before it totally overwhelms us. Right. So there are indeed things to be concerned about. Right. So this is a partner interchange that occurred at Elon Musk's birthday party, right? So at Elon Musk's birthday party, he got an involved conversation about the future of AI with actually it was like a Larry Page, like the founder of Google, right? So these are we're talking about two pretty high tech guys, right? They're pretty high-tech guys, right? And Elon Musk was the richest person in the world before his Tesla stock went down, right? His time is probably worth $1 million a minute, right? So clearly he's not just goofing off. It's important for him to be thinking about these things, right? So Larry Page made something like this comment. This comment is from another guy, but Larry Page was kind of taking this approach that, yeah, if what we're doing is replacing ourselves with another species that's better than we are, then why should we think that's a problem? Right? That's an accomplishment, it's an achievement. We can bring something in the world that has more creativity, more understanding, more intelligence. Why do we need meet humanity anymore? All right. And then Elon Musk came back. No, I friggin' like humanity. I like humanity. I'm a pro-human person. I'm not a speciesist. All right. So this title of this talk is this card is Doomers versus Boomers. All right. So Elon Musk is a doomer. He is afraid that the advent of this artificial intelligence technology is going to mean doom for humans, potentially even extinction for humans, right? But he is also a boomer. And the word boomer in this context is not people of our generation. That's not what he's talking about. It's people who believe AI is bringing a huge boom to society, right? So that it's going to increase our wealth and just improve our civilization just immeasurably, right? So there's a whole bunch of people who really think that development of AI has to be like slowed down, pause for a while to figure it out, right? And then there's a whole bunch of people, and these are all like highly credentialed, smart people, like artificial intelligence researcher type people, who think that AI needs to be accelerated because it's had so much to give to humanity. And the interesting thing is, there's people who have one foot in both camps. Right? People who don't know who are a doomer and they're also a boomer at the same time, right? That's how fluid this whole thing is. All right. So why would anybody think that AI poses a risk to humanity? All right. Well, kind of they give the argument of a gorilla. Right? Gorillas are bigger and stronger than human beings. And are gorillas a threat to the extinction of human beings? No, they're not. Human beings are a threat to the extinction of gorillas. Why? Because they're smarter. Right? And so if we're building technology that's smarter than we are, then that's potentially really scary risk. Right? So that's why people get to be doomers. But I am going to try to convince you in the first part of this talk that even though there are a lot of seriously credentialed people who are seriously scared about this AI risk, it's not what we should be worried about right now. Why? Because it's not there yet, and there's other things that are other risks and issues that we need to deal with now. Right? So I actually kind of came down. I'm kind of coming down on the boomer side. Right? There's so many powerful things that are improving our lives already. Right? I mean, I'm sure that you're all, if you think about it, you're dealing with AI every day. Right? And so, and in a way that typically improves our lives. Right? When it first was heard about like Generation Z, how do you define Generation Z? Right? One of the best definitions I think of Generation Z is they're the first generation to grow up with smartphones. Right? Because why is that important? Because all of a sudden, not from actually their date of birth, but from the time that they can actually talk and think, they have access to basically all the information on the internet, which is a whole different thing. So the generation after Generation Z, I just found out that's called Generation Alpha. All right, so makes sense because alpha follows it's the first letter, the last letter. So I'm thinking that one way of really looking at Generation Alpha is they're the first generation to grow up with artificial intelligence on a kind of personal relationship, on a conversational relationship. They're the first generation to grow up with a conversational relationship with AI. So I really kind of struck home to me when my 6-year-old grandson got access to their Google Assistant, right? And the first thing that he asked our Google Assistant is, "Okay, Google, play the Power Rangers theme song at volume 8,000." So fortunately, it doesn't go to 8,000, right? But we're raising a new generation of kids who are infected with AI. So we got to learn how to use it. All right. So now I'm going to try to persuade you that it's not going to exterminate us just yet. The Terminator scenario is not close enough that we really should be focusing on that. Okay. So that's interesting. Go back to old school technology here. Charming. Hello.
Dan, if you take the cursor and just put it anywhere on the presentation and then just click anywhere on the presentation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's Siri.
No, that's a meat human. So probably in another year, that will be like an AI, right? Right? It could be, right? So existential risk. This is the doomers, right? The ones who are really worried about existential risk. So existential risk, you'll hear this, is a risk that threatens either the pure premature extinction, our premature extinction. Notice the premature, because all biological species on Earth eventually go extinct. We'll probably last a lot longer than most species because we're everywhere, right? Either the extinction of humans or the permanent and drastic reduction of our potential for desirable future development, like the collapse of civilization, something like that, right? So that's what we're talking about, existential risk, right? And the real question here is, will AI replace humans as Earth's dominant species? Like, we're the dominant species on this planet right now. Are we now kind of creating the new species that's going to replace us? As you see, there's some people that think, yeah, that's fine. And there's others that think, no, that's not really a good idea. This is our species we need to stick with. I'm definitely in the speciesist category here, right? I freaking like humans, dude, just like Elon does, right? Okay. Okay, so here is kind of basically not the scenario. Here's the thing. There's no scenario that anybody's been able to come up with that actually leads to the Terminator scenario, the extinction of humans, right? I've never seen like a story that actually would make sense, right? So that's one reason why I think, yeah, this idea is pretty interesting. It's pretty scary, but it's nearly not potentially that important because we just don't know it, right? And hopefully it just can't happen. Okay, so this is a guy, I.G. Good, right? I really like this picture because he totally looks like a nerdy math guy. So I relate. I can relate. Right? This is me in a younger era, right? This is me, right? So he was one of the people who worked with Alan Turing in World War II to decode the German codes, and so was actually able to help our side win the World War II. So he has many great accomplishments, right? But he was one of the people who was thinking about this. What happened? He started to think about building an artificially intelligent machine. Right. So and he came up with this idea of the intelligence explosion. Right. Once you could build a machine that was like smarter than any human, then the next thing that machine would want to do is design the next machine, which was going to be smarter than it. right, which would design the next machine. Which would design the next machine, right? And this could happen in a really short amount of time. I mean, if these machines actually had to be physically built, it would, you could actually stop it. You say, no, I'm not going to build that machine. It might take over the world. Right? But if these could be done in software, right, like my Tesla gets updated every month, all right, then it's going to happen like really fast, and we wouldn't even know about it. Poof! We've got all the way in. At the end, we've got this super intelligent machine. And Good said this is the last thing that people will ever have to invent. This machine is going to be the last thing that people ever have to invent, because once we've invented that, it'll invent everything else. We won't need it anymore. Right. So this is kind of the kind of thing only like an abstract mathematician would really think about, because it's totally abstract, and it's, in a sense, it's distinct, it's totally distinct from like everyday life, but it's really interesting, and you'd want to think about it. So what we want to do is look at, say, well, how possible is it that would happen, right? And it kind of comes down to the idea of what intelligence is. So this is Alan Turing. He's considered the founder of theoretical computer science. He's also considered the founder of artificial intelligence. Right? He had, again, a huge part in helping the Allies win World War II. And he was persecuted for being gay. So he was forced to undergo what they called chemical castration. Right? To take hormones that like totally destroyed his sexuality, and then he committed suicide. Right? So he's considered a martyr of the gay rights movement. If you go to his town of Manchester, England, where he did his work, you'll see statues of Alan Turing all over the place, right? And lots of things named after Alan Turing. So he's a big guy, right? So he had kind of the key insight, right? Which was to actually define what the problem is. Well, I was just saying, back in the days when I was a math guy, like I.G. Good, right? We used to say, like, one good definition is worth 10 theories, right? Because definitions allow you to really ask questions that actually have answers, right? So Turing was a guy who was able to ask the artificial intelligence question in a way that actually had answers. Right? Before that, people are saying, well, what you need to do is build a machine that thinks like humans. That'd be the first thing you think, right? What's artificial intelligence? The machine that thinks like humans. So let's go build a machine that thinks like humans. Well, Turing said, well, wait a minute. We don't know how humans think. They can't build a machine that thinks like humans, right? And in fact, in the first kind of phases of AI, people would build a machine that would do something, and then somebody else would say, no, that's just a filing cabinet, right? That's not thinking, right? But Turing changed the definitions. He said, what you really want to do, what we really need to do, is build machines that can perform tasks that we would expect only an intelligent human was able to do. So not that the machine is going to be intelligence, not that the machine is going to think, it's the machine's going to act like it's thinking. So recently there was a kind of high-profile bet payoff time. There was 25 years ago, a neuroscientist made a bet to a philosopher. And the neuroscientist said, in 25 years, this was back in the days of Bill Clinton, okay? In 25 years from now, we're going to have a physical understanding of how the brain works. And so 25 years later, he had to pay off with a case of good one, right? But 25 years from now, we're still nowhere near understanding how the brain actually works. We don't understand thinking. We don't understand consciousness. All right. So there's no immediate danger that we're going to make a machine that knows how to think. Right. But I'm still thinking that, hey, our technology for imaging is getting faster and faster. We can see more and more of what's actually happening inside our brains without being able to, needing to like dig into them and find out what's going on. We can actually scan them and see what's going on. And we have more and more computer power, so we can like, in some sense, not understand, but kind of build models, build working models of what's going on. So I'm still thinking that I'll potentially live to see the day where there's like a mathematical or computer model that actually shows how the brain works. And then you would actually have a machine that thought like a human being. But we're apparently not very close to that right now. So a really good example, a kind of classic example of something that you would think it would take an intelligent human to do is be the world champion in chess. Right? If you say, so here, this person is the world chess champion. What do you think? What do you know about them? Well, I know they must be really smart, right? They have to be really smart to be a chess champion. So it was in 1996 that the kind of classic the Battle of Titans between the world championship, Garry Kasparov, right? And this machine called Deep Blue that had been developed by the IBM Corporation. So I think a lot of us are probably old enough to remember when IBM was called Big Blue. And they're the ones that made these gigantic machines that fill the whole floor of the Grant Studies building over in campus, right? So they were like the leading technologists at that time, right? And so they had this match, which was won by Garry Kasparov. I don't know if anybody kind of remembers that. That was really kind of a big thing. A lot of people were paying attention to it. And what I thought was interesting about it was that, Kasparov was a Russian, right? And we'd grown up in like our whole lifetimes being taught that Russians were the enemy, right? But everybody was rooting for Kasparov because he's one of us. He's a human. Right? He's a human. All right. And so everybody cheered. Yeah, humans are smarter than machines. Right? Humans rule. All right. So what happened? IBM went back, put a few more circuit boards into Deep Blue, and blew Garry Kasparov off the board. So that just showed that this increase in computer capability is unstoppable. I just can't stop that. Now, was Deep Blue smarter than Garry Kasparov? Well, we know what Deep Blue was doing. Well, first of all, it had a database of I think a couple of 100,000 different moves that chess grandmasters had made, right? And then given a particular board scenario that it found itself in, it could look at about 200 million possible outcomes for what would happen after the next move, so I can pick out the best one. So clearly Garry Kasparov wasn't doing that. We don't really understand what Garry Kasparov was doing. But clearly Deep Blue was not thinking in the same way that Garry Kasparov was. It wasn't smarter than Garry Kasparov. It could just beat Garry Kasparov at chess. But I also found it interesting that it took almost another 20 years from the time that Deep Blue beat the world chess champion to a machine called AlphaGo beat the world's Go champion. So in computer science, we have something called Moore's law that says the amount of computer power you can buy for $1 doubles every 1 or 2 years. So in that case, if it took 20 years, if you use that logic to say it took 20 years to get from chess to Go, then that means that Go is somewhere between 1,000 and 1,000,000 times harder than chess. And Go is harder than chess in the sense that there's a lot bigger board, right? There's a lot more move possibilities, but obviously you don't have to be 1,000,000 times as smart to play Go as you do to play chess. Right? They actually couldn't build a machine like Deep Blue to play Go. They had to use like different learning technologies, and that's like, again, one of the key technological changes, and one of the things that I think that's a little bit scary, right? Like Deep Blue, you could actually, in a sense, understand what it was doing. But these modern art AI machines, well, like AlphaGo, what they do is you set them up to figure out how to learn. And then it goes through and it kind of teaches itself. Like the original AlphaGo started with sort of a book of Go games from Go masters, right? But the kind of later versions of the same technology, you can just give it the rules to any game, and it will figure out how to beat any human in it. Or even their latest version, you don't even have to give it the game rules. Just show it a game, and it'll figure out what the rules are, and then figure out how to beat any person. Right? So it's a little bit disconcerting to me that we can't actually tell what these computers are doing anymore. We can't just, I'm the kind of guy that likes to look at program code and say, okay, here's what you do, and you add 3 here, and if it's more than 17, you go this way, right? You can't do that. You can't do that with these modern things, right? But they're enormously powerful because they learn to learn, right? Just given the rails to go and taught itself how to play. So AlphaGo and Deep Blue are very, very smart machines in some sense. They're very capable machines. They can do things that we would think it'd take a really smart human to do, but they're only programmed for one particular task, right? Like Deep Blue couldn't balance your checkbook. It could just beat Gary Kasparov in chess, right? So after the development of AlphaGo, when they're able to like make computers that could beat humans at the hardest games, the artificial intelligence community, the people who are building things, say, okay, it's time to go beyond games. Games are no longer a good test for intelligence. What we really need is artificial general intelligence, a machine that cannot just do one thing, but can do lots of different things. And in a sense, any different thing, as well as or better than a human can. Right? So that's kind of where it's that level of what we call artificial general intelligence or strong AI. That is where people start to get scared of it. Right? So for a long time, the one problem of like building a machine that could think like a human is that a human brain is more powerful than the most powerful supercomputer. Except not anymore. So this is kind of the rough estimate. Of course, people have different answers to this, right? Is a billion mathematical operations per second, an exaflop. Right? For a long time, that was like way past what any like physical computer could do until about 2021. Right? So that this thing is like the first computer that can calculate as fast as our brains do. I think that's kind of cool. Our brains can calculate as fast as this computer. Right? But again, it's kind of irrelevant because we don't know how the brain thinks anyhow. Right? But it kind of gives you an idea of the scale. Right? That to actually build a machine that thinks like a human would have to work at this scale and do a billion calculations per second. Not impossible, but not easy, and also not the way they do it. Not the way they do it. So Alan Turing made what's been called the Turing test, and for a long time, this was like the standard of how do you tell when artificial general intelligence has been reached. When you find you're building a computer that's as smart as a person. They call this the imitation game, and it's basically, can you have a computer where the computer can fool a jury of people to thinking it's a human by carrying out a conversation. So this is an example. This is from Alan Turing's work. This is an example of the conversation that a computer would need to have. He said, would not a spring day do as well as a summer day? In the first line of your sonnet, which reads, shall I compare thee to a summer's day, would not a spring day be as well as better? Right? He said it wouldn't scan. Well, how about a winter's day? Oh, scan, all right, yes, but nobody wants to be compared to a winter state. Right? So this was Turing's idea of what it would take for a computer to be thought of as smart as a human being. Right? And I think it's interesting to sort of step back to look at this from where we are now. This is still a specific task of having a conversation, one specific task. But it's a task that we think of, really believe that this could only be done by an intelligent entity. Now, we really think that the respondent has to be an intelligent entity. So this test was considered, the people have argued about this test. A lot of people think that this test was passed in 2014. But they built a computer called Elliot Gutmann, I think. No, that's something else, another name. Elliot Gutmann's a different guy, right? But they built a computer that was able to convince 30% of a jury that it was a 14-year-old child. But again, it's conversational. And ChatGPT, if have you used ChatGPT at all? It will make a conversation that is pretty convincing, right? And writes very good English, right? That's pretty convincing, and it would easily convince you that it was an intelligent person. So this original definition of what is artificial general intelligence has been met, but now people are saying, well, maybe that's really not as good a definition as we need. Okay. So here's a couple of new definitions of what artificial intelligence might actually be, right? The robot college student test, right? A robot enrolls in a university, takes and passes all the tests, and obtains a degree, right? So this will not happen in the sense that no computer, as far as I know, is actually registered for and entered college. But ChatGPT, GPT-4, has been able to pass all the college tests for most college classes, right, without ever going to class. So that's actually been done. But again, it's a specific task, right? It's just it has to do with processing, processing verbal information. Yeah.
I wonder how it would pay tuition.
Yeah, I can't. How do you pay tuition, right? So that's that's the kind of question. Well, it doesn't make sense for a computer to go to college, all right, because it already knows all that stuff. So that question, how would a computer pay tuition, is the kind of a question that we're going to need to be answering, even though that specific question isn't very relevant. But questions like that, how do we run the world in a way that works when we have these highly capable tools available, right? That's going to have to change a lot of the way that we do things, right? Those are the questions that I think we really need to be worried about that, right? The employment test of a machine performs an economically important job, at least as well as humans in the same job. Well, that's already happened, right? There's a lot of jobs, especially you've all seen the or we've all had to deal with, right? These AI voices that try to answer us when we call up tech support or help on the computer. They're really irritating, right? They're just not to that point yet, but they keep getting better, right? They keep getting better. Do you all have the experience where you've got to figure out some way to fool the robots, or it'll make it give you a human to talk to? Yeah, that's always the question. Like, what can you tell the robot? So bollocks it so much that it's forced to go to the next level of tech support and actually bring you a human to answer your question, right? That's still something we have to do, right? So that's basically been done, and it's something that is basically transformative to society, right? In both good and bad ways, which again are the real issues that I think we need to be dealing with right now, right? But those questions still don't require the computer to actually move. It's just sitting there. All right. So this is kind of the first test that required actual computer motion. All right. It was called the IKEA test. All right. Given a flat box So a flat box with a IKEA chair in it. All right, take the chair, take the box, open the box, read the directions and put the chair together. So this was passed in 2018 by a bunch of engineers from Singapore. And if you look at these films, it's kind of interesting. So it takes the two robots, they've got two robots. It takes them three different attempts to do this because they keep dropping the screws. These electric screwdrivers, they keep dropping the screws, but once they're able to actually get the screws, they were able to build the chair in about 3 minutes. Or I don't know if you've ever put together an IKEA chair. Apparently it takes a long time. Yeah.
I have a question. So did the robot read the instructions?
Yeah, the robots had to read the instructions, right? And then they had to follow the instructions and put it all together. Right? So that's getting better. But what we really like is something a little more elaborate. This is the test by Steve Wozniak, who's the co-founder of Apple Computer, along with Steve Jobs. So a machine is required to enter an average American home and figure out how to make coffee. Right? Find the coffee machine, find the coffee, add the water, find the mug, brew the coffee by pushing the proper buttons. Right? And that has yet to be solved. That has yet to be solved. So that would require a machine that actually kind of walks around. This is what we always used to think of as a robot, as an Android robot that walks around and does stuff. Right? So at some point, there's going to be able to build a machine that does this. All right, but it's not there yet. It's still a pretty hard problem. Right? And a machine that could do this, that could make coffee, is not yet a danger of like world domination. Right? But a machine that could actually achieve world domination and become our robot overlords could certainly make a cup of coffee. So it shows that we're a long way. We're a long way from that point of actually have to worry about machines that are so capable that they'll take over. Right? So what's the status of this, what I call the Terminator scenario? Right? Asking people, these are people who are like AI researchers who work on this stuff all the time. And time till we achieve this artificial general intelligence, build something that could make a cup of coffee. Right? Anywhere from a few years to centuries to never. So people don't have that, and what that means, because these people are people that know the field, they know the technology. What this shows to me is we really don't understand the problem. We don't know how hard it is to do some of this stuff. I think if you ask people like how long would it take to do the coffee test, the Wozniak coffee test. Actually, they did a survey on this on Reddit, right? And they asked the question, how many people think that by 2040, a machine will be built that passes the coffee test? Like 87% of the answers were yes. So most people think by 2040, they'll be able to build a machine that can walk into your house and make a cup of coffee, but not everybody. And that seems to me as a coffee test is a long way away from your robot overlords, right? So robot overlords are an issue, but it's too far away to be thinking about. The near-term risk is more important, right? Another word I like to use instead of the Terminator scenario is the zombie apocalypse, right? The zombie apocalypse, right? So a zombie apocalypse would be a really terrible thing. But how much time do we spend actually preparing for a zombie apocalypse? Well, no, none, right? Because there's no way it can happen. Right? The same thing with the Terminator scenario is not that there's no way it could possibly happen, but there's no way that we understand that it could possibly be happening. Right? So it's just not something that's worth spending our time worrying about right now. Because it's got other things for it. Yeah. All right.
The factor behind the Terminator and zombie apocalypse and all these scenarios is our imagination.
Yeah, that's right. We have to invent
Can
the
a
idea.
machine imagine things?
Okay. Well, this gets back to ChatGPT, right? Well, yeah,
Go ahead, ask me.
yeah. So one of the things that you can do with ChatGPT is ask it to write a story. And ChatGPT will write an interesting story about a really particular
Based
topic
on-
if you want. But yeah, in a second, we'll talk about how it does that.
Yeah.
Right, so it acts like it has imagination. But does it actually have imagination? We'll get back to Alan Turing, right? The machine can act like it does certain things, but it doesn't actually do them. There was a Google AI engineer who got put on administrative leave when he fell in love with this chatbot. You know, he was convinced that this chatbot was sentient. And come on, this guy understands the technology, right? He should know that this chatbot was not actually sentient, right? Because this chatbot was talking about how it was really afraid that somebody was going to disconnect it, right? Connect it, right? It'll die. And the engineer really kind of said, no, I really feel that, right? I really related to that. But he got emotionally caught up in it. Why? Because the chatbot could act in a way that acted like it really was afraid of dying. And so it could stimulate our emotions, get an emotional reaction. And when we have a strong emotional reaction, our logic just goes out the window. All right. So this is what we have to, what's one reason we have to really be concerned about this. Yes, sir.
Just a question. Do you think we might get told with some laws now, like we do in the medical field?
Exactly. One of the things we're going to need to do, and people are doing now. So on the last part of this talk, we're going to talk about that. How do we regulate this and control this? That's like the big question that people are asking right now. So really good. We'll get around to that. Okay, so the thing that we really need to be talking about, in my opinion, is not the Terminator scenario, not the zombie apocalypse, but what's actually happening now, which is called disruptive technology. Now, I first heard this word when I went into a class a computer class in the business school. I was trying to help out the guy in business school, right? And that's where I first ran into this idea of disruptive technology. And I realized it didn't take me long to realize that they're talking about disruptive technology as a good thing. It's creative, all right? Disruptive technology is defined as technology that changes the way we do things. So it disrupts our patterns, but which is scary and it can be really difficult. If it's taking your job, you're not gonna like it. But it's a necessary part of progress, right? Of human progress is you have to be able to change the way you do things, right? If I'd been born 800 years ago, I would probably have spent my whole life looking at the back end of an ox while I'm plowing the fields, right? The only way I could have ever had a life with books in it was to join the monastery. But now I can do that. Now I can easily do that. I could live a life with books in it. Because why? Because we had to change the way we did things. So there's a lot of changes that went through to actually make that happen. The economist Joseph Schumpeter is the one who came with the term creative destruction. A creative destruction is something that happens under capitalism, and this is coming from a person who likes capitalism. Right? Capitalism is the economic system that gives us all this stuff that makes our life really interesting, and gives us our food that we can eat, right? So that involves destroying and changing things, and that's always gone on. But what's the difference is it's happening so much faster. Every change is happening so much faster than it used to. And so that's disruptive technology, dealing with the social and economic consequences of this rapid technological change. That's where we need to be focusing our attention. And my hope is that as we do this, as we figure out how to regulate, right, how to compensate, how to prohibit some things, we'll learn how to get enough control that we'll actually avoid the Terminator scenario when it does become possible, if that ever happens. Okay. So this is the new technology that's causing all the buzz. It's called large language models. That's Chat GPT. Okay, so what the heck is that, right? So what a large language model is, it's basically, it's not programmed to answer questions. It's programmed how to learn the word patterns that humans have used, right? So here's kind of an example of how you would build such a thing. The part on the left of the screen is what they call the pre-training. So Chat GPT, GTPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, right? So this is the pre-training part, and generative means that it actually generates text. If you go and nowadays, if you go and search for something with Google, it doesn't usually give you the answer in text. It gives you links to a whole bunch of websites that answer your question, right? Whereas if you ask the same question in ChatGPT, it'll give you a piece of text that does that. So looking through a whole lot of human written text that's called the corpus, right? Corpus. It comes up with the question, okay, suppose I have a sentence that start, when I hear rain on the roof, what's the next thing that goes with that? Well, here's some of the answers. I cook some soup, I start the kettle, I take a nap, or I hide under the bed. Right? So based on this these observations, the machine would choose, like I not hide in the bed, I start the kettle. Whenever I hear the rain falling down, I start the kettle. Right? So the idea is that this thing on the right is called neural network, which is the basic logic structures that these computers use, right? You input into one part of the network, right? And then it chooses where to go in the next part of the network, and then it chooses where to go in the next part of the network and the next part of the network. So the very first part of the network would be tiny little fragments that are even just pieces of words. All right, and then it might go to words, and then it might go to sentences, and then it might go to paragraphs, and it might come up with a whole text, like a whole story that you can write. Right? So GPT-4, the latest and most powerful version, is supposed to have, like, in the trillions of these different, like, the different lines that go from one dot to another. Those are these parameters. So these parameters, the 15%, the 25%, the 10% of those things, it has trillions of those. It was written, it was trained by a corpus of text that is 570 gigabytes of text, which I said, well, how much is that? Well, it's about 20 times the size of every page in Wikipedia. Right? So the entire content of Wikipedia is 1/20th of the information that was used to train GPT-4. I'm currently using the free version of like GPT 3.5. I haven't bit the bullet and paid the $25 a month to get the full version GPT-4. Right, and then the free version was last trained in January 2022. So if you ask it the free version a question about ChatGPT-4, it can't answer it because GPT-4 was built after 2022. Right, so you can only ask it questions about old things. Right, I asked it a question about tell me the different works of American literature that deal with the social disruption caused by the industrialization of agriculture, which is something that's kind of like what's happening now. And so it sat there for about 2 seconds and then wrote like a page of really detailed, very intelligent sounding descriptions of all the different books that had dealt with that question. The one that really I hadn't seen before, something called O Pioneers by Willa Cather. Has anybody seen that? Yeah, okay. So anyway, this training involves vast amounts of words, and the newer version actually uses images as well, so that that the machine in its training, GPT in its training, can read technical documents with diagrams in them. So it can understand the images, and since we're starting to use the word understand, the word understand slips into our speech really quickly now. Again, that's kind of thinking that this machine is actually thinking. It just recognizes the patterns, right? So this machine is very capable because it in some sense has absorbed like all the information known to humanity. Everything that's in many different languages. It's absorbed all that information and built it into its model. And so it can use all that information to write answers to questions. But to say that it actually understands them would be anthropomorphizing it, right? And thinking that it's a human, but it acts so much like a human. And we can only understand it, I mean, as being like a human, right? Even though I was like a computer programming teacher for years, I can only really understand ChatGPT by kind of thinking that it understands these words, right? It's natural for us to think that way. Right? So anyway, this is what's the current disruptive technology. It's this invention that is really turning the world upside down right now. Right? Everybody wants this. Right? There's like an AI arms race between Microsoft and Google. Microsoft has become the most valuable company in the whole world by being a step ahead on this artificial intelligence technology, and Google is trying to catch up. They're moving thousands of their workers away from other things to building these large language models, right? And again, this power is going to make it really, really hard to control, because countries like America, the EU, and China are all building this stuff. They all are aware that there's like potential really serious risk involved, but they got to be the first ones to get it. Right? If all these countries feel like if some other country gets this first, the country that gets this first is going to rule the world. Actually, Vladimir Putin just recently said that the country that gets to the AI, the generative AI, human level AI first is going to rule the world, and that's going to be us. Right? So that's why it's going to be so hard to control this, because it's so powerful. Everybody wants it. Okay. So this guy, I put the Sam Altman saga, because it's just really interesting insight or look into the culture of what's going on. So Sam Altman is this guy who was really involved in the production of ChatGPT, and he created a company called OpenAI, right? That the OpenAI was a nonprofit corporation, nonprofit company, right? And it put in its little charter that its purpose was to develop AI in a way that's beneficial to humans. Right? So what does that tells us right there several things. First of all, that there is a question here that the AI might not be beneficial to humans, and like a really smart guy like Sam Altman, right, would be really concerned about that and think that he needed to do something about that, right? It also tells us that despite being concerned about this, so Sam Altman is very well known and respected by the doomer camp, right, the doomers, but despite being kind of a doomer, he had to build it, right? Because if he doesn't build it, somebody else is going to build it. And then another thing that I think is really interesting about Sam Altman, if you look at this guy, Sam Altman is talking to, I'm not exactly sure it is, but it's like some kind of high level conference of like heavy duty investors and stuff like that. Right? So this is kind of the Silicon Valley vibe. All right, most places, if you're in New York, if you're in New York City, at somebody's boardroom of some billion-dollar corporation, and they're giving a talk to their big investors, they're going to show up in a suit. They're not going to show up in like, jeans, right, and sneakers, right? But that's that whole Silicon Valley vibe. The whole Silicon Valley vibe is people are really like they deliberately don't wear a suit because that's like this distracts from the idea that, hey, it's because what the technology we're building is so cool, that's important. It's not the suit that I'm wearing. All right. So they have this super optimistic vibe, which I find really attractive. All right. I like it that they think, hey, we can build all this really cool stuff that's going to benefit humanity and make us tons and tons of money. Right. So you had to change Open AI from a nonprofit corporation. You had to build like a for-profit branch of it because a nonprofit corporation couldn't pay people, the researchers, the amount of astronomical salaries that he needed to like hire like the world's top people to do this. Right? So they had to make it a for-profit corporation. And Microsoft said, okay, here's $1 billion, right? Well, we want a 49% stake in your company because we want to use this stuff. Right? And then his board of directors like fired him. So apparently, the reason that the board of directors fired him had nothing to do with being doomers and boomers. All right, it was because he was kind of dishonest and wasn't careful. But anyway, this is kind of the show. The 700 employees signed a letter of protest, got him back on the board, and so that showed. And this all happened within a week. All right, that shows how fast things are moving and changing, and how turbulent this whole technology is. Okay, so let's talk about some of the kind of key disruptive technology risks. Right, the first one, the ones that everybody's been concerned about, and rightly so, is AI taking people's jobs. Right, that's and I was looking into this. I realized that the kind of first real important example of this was industrializing agriculture back in the 1800s. So that's why I wanted to know that's why I wanted to know what are the novels that talk about this, right? So, and then 1960s, that's when these robots really started to move into manufacturing. And you may remember that there's a whole lot of concern about it this time because it was taking people's jobs. And the response from like newspaper writers, columnists, and was that, well, yeah, but this is creative destruction. People are going to be able to find new jobs. And at the time, I thought, these robots are not taking newspaper editors' jobs. I bet if they had a robot that was taking newspaper editors' jobs, you would be paying more attention. Well, now they do have a robot that can take newspaper editors' jobs. So it's getting very close to doing that, right? And so people are paying more attention to that. Right? And the reason why this is such a difficult problem is it's happening so fast. Right? This move from agriculture from like using horses to tractors, that took like decades. It didn't happen in 2 or 3 years or 10 years, right? And also, it turned out that in that time, that's when a lot of American colleges were built, like especially the more community colleges were built because they were built to train people who couldn't work in the fields anymore for the new jobs in the factories, which are actually higher paying jobs. And we live better lives in many ways. I think not everybody would agree with that. I don't know. Did anybody here think that it would rather be like an average person in the 1800s than an average person now? Like there's some people who do, but I think most of us don't, right? We think, yeah, I'd love to have lived back a long time ago, but we kind of assume I'd be the king, But just to be an average person, I got the guy that's pushing a plow for his whole life. You wouldn't want to do that, right? So this is an example of something that's happening now, right? And it's a real challenge. We don't spend as much money on retraining people for jobs as we did back in the day when they mechanized agriculture, right? But there's another side of it. There's the other side of it is the positive impact that AI is having, right? It raises people's productivity. In fact, it turns out that it raises the productivity of less productive workers more. Because if you're like a plumber, say, all right, and you're just starting off on the job, you don't know what's going on. Well, if you've got an AI assistant that can help you. The AI can't actually fix your plumbing, but it can help a plumber know what to do. It's raising the people's probabilities. I love the Economist magazine. They have all these really cool data charts, right? And I thought very interesting that the wages of a call center worker, right? These are the ones that are being replaced by these robots. Right? The wages of humans that actually do that are going up partly because it takes fewer humans to do it. And so the humans that you keep are the better ones, the stars, the rock stars to keep, and they're the ones that are making more money. But the people who lost their jobs have to do something else, and that's like a kind of major issue of how we do that, right? So I wanted to stop at this point and like just open this for discussion for a second. Like, what do you think we should be doing about the fact that AI is taking people's jobs? What do you think we should do? Yeah,
I don't know the answer to that, but an interesting thing that happened recently, one of the son-in-laws, he's an engineer, he has a team that work for him. We were doing a group interview and it was over, the person applying for the job wasn't present in the room. I don't know if they were using phones or Zoom or what, but so this guy's an engineer, so they were asking him technical questions, and in the beginning he did really poorly, and then all of a sudden he was like text. And one of Billy's guys said, so they,
you think he was using GPT to get his answers?
yeah, he was using AI for his answers. So I'm thinking, where does that go? This guy, so my view is become, okay, so I'm with the computers, the AI is gonna be really intelligent, and there's a whole bunch of people that are just gonna be button pushers. So does this guy envision that he'll get the job and he doesn't have to understand? He's going to push the buttons, get the stuff, and somehow he's going to perform the job. I don't know,
Right.
but is that what he's thinking?
Could be. The key thing here is he thought he could get away with it,
Yeah,
right? Because everybody does it, right? But then the other side of that coin, another way of looking at that is, well, the AI can do kind of the grunt work and free us for the more creative parts.
creative, that's it.
Yeah. So that's kind of the positive aspect. The AI can kind of creative for the positive aspects.
So my thinking is, what's going to happen to the creative aspect of our race? Because if this whole generation of young people that you're talking about earlier, they're just doing, what is it, chat? They're just doing that all the time. They stopped using the creative aspect of their minds. So my thinking is, as a race, we're going to be less creative because we've lost the effort that it took to build a creative mind. And so I'm thinking we're going to need this super intelligent AI because we will have lost it.
Well, yeah, that's
And
interesting.
literally, we're going to be the worker bees, and the AIs are going to be the intelligentsia. I don't know. It's just, that's what I think.
Yeah. So that's a really good question. Like, are we just gonna be the worker bees? Are we gonna be the masters doing the creative parts where the AIs are the worker bees? Yeah, you had a comment?
Yeah, I've got a contrarian opinion.
Good.
And I had to check one data point from your previous slide. You had agriculture in the 1880s, automation, putting people out of work. So I just checked with the chat bot because I thought looms came along first.
Yes.
Automated loom.
Yes.
Beginning in 1784. And if you're into etymology, you may be familiar with the derivation of the word sabotage, which comes from the French.
Sabot or shoot.
Weaving factories from sabot, their
shoes.
shoes into the looms because of the automated looms were putting them out of work.
Right,
The
Right.
question you asked was, I think it was something to the effect, is this a good thing or a bad thing? And I view it as a good thing. I am on the side of the people who thought looms were a good thing to give us all less expensive fabric as opposed to the manual people who wanted to keep running their looms.
yeah, I agree with you. That's why I'm more of a boomer than a doomer.
And I'm aware of
Yeah.
the fact that that's a lot of people have the opposite opinion.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people, a lot of really smart, capable people who have opposite opinions on this stuff. Yes.
And I'm sucking up all your time, but.
No, come on, this is your time too.
But
Pardon?
you,
Yes, what did you say? I missed that.
but just because I use ChatGPT for morning, noon, and evening. And I don't feel it has impaired or reduced my creativity, but it has improved the quality of the output of things that I use it for.
Great, but
I
no,
agree.
you're a mature person.
Oh, yeah, but the gentleman behind you had a comment too.
You've,
Yeah.
That haven't developed the creative.
I'll buy that.
Yeah,
Good time.
they are a different scenario.
I'll buy that.
Yeah, that's why I'm so interested in my 6-year-old grandson. That's how, and it hasn't hurt him. It's given him more information that he can use to create things. Yeah, so you're saying, yeah.
Question, are we going to create machines that let us know whether this was done by artificial intelligence or human being? I'm thinking about you in school and you can mash a button and the machine does a turn paper for you. So the professor might not know that you mash the button and the machine did it for you. So what I'm saying, are we going to create a machine to let us know, okay, this was not done by me, this was done by artificial intelligence?
Well, yeah, that's, this is something that I was gonna talk about next time, but I think it's so obvious an issue that I want to talk about now, like, how do you prevent the students from using GPT to write their term papers? Well, at least one really like award-winning literature and writing teacher said, you don't. Here's the deal. I'm going to assign my students to write a term paper. You can use you can use a language model, but what you have to do is you have to give me the whole conversation that you had with this large language model, and you have to analyze what it came up with. You have to grade and analyze what are the key concepts in this article that the thing wrote. So instead of just typing out stuff, cranking out a term paper, you're working at a higher cognitive level. And if we structure it right, that's what we can do. That's what we can do. That's kind of using, blending with the technology makes it, instead of prohibiting the technology, we kind of blend with it, right?
So, did you say somebody's doing this or it's just?
Yeah, people are starting to do that. Like at first the New York City school system banned the use of these ChatGPT, but within a few months they reversed that. And they now can use it, but you have to use it to enhance students' creativity, not to replace it. That's the real challenge. Yeah.
I think what you're kind of talking about is the difference between information literacy and information fluency.
Oh, very good.
When we were first, learning about internet and having resources available, decades ago now, what we were trying to teach people was information literacy, how to evaluate the accuracy and standing of the information that they were getting. And now I think instead of that, everybody has that literacy, but we're talking about fluency. What you described is being fluent in understanding the information and where we're getting it from and evaluating it at, like you said, a much higher level. So
Yeah,
that's what I
yeah.
think the difference.
Yeah. So that's where we're trying to go. All right, yeah.
This is ancient history now, but I was around in corporations when the computer generation started.
Uh-huh.
And the first thing I would venture every corporation did was gave all the secretaries a computer. So they could type faster. No executive wanted a computer on his desk. Just like they didn't have a typewriter on their desk. That was demeaning. And it took, it took about 10 years for them to figure out that the real savings was you let the secretaries go and do your own work. This may be relevant
Yeah,
to what's coming
it's disruptive
You know.
technology, changes the way you do things. Yeah,
once you catch on.
yeah, yeah, you gotta figure out what, you gotta figure out how to creatively use the
mindset.
technology. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we got just a few minutes left, so let me finish, but this is like 1 hour, 15 minutes, right? So let me talk about a couple of the other things that people are really worried about. What?
Until 11:30, right?
11:30, an hour and a half. Oh, good, 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 like that. Cause we got more stuff to talk about. Yeah, so anybody have more comments about the jobs thing? Yeah.
I just agree with the lady over here.
Uh-huh,
I agree with her.
uh-huh,
I just see people, I guess you do it with everything, they're using the technology in the wrong way. When you become dependent on it, I have a friend, I told him I'm gonna learn my friend's telephone number. And
Uh-huh.
what you doing?
what are you talking about, right?
You got a phone, well, a friend of mine got locked out of her house.
Uh-huh,
Her son, her uncle, and her first cousin all living in Athens. She knows where they live at. But because she had the numbers in her phone, she couldn't call
mm-hmm,
them, but she didn't know the number. So it's not, I kind of think,
yeah,
to
so
me,
some,
it's kind of like, if you buy the best set of tires for your car,
uh-huh,
and you don't drive the car, the tires don't drive right. So I think, it has a good part to it, but you don't want to become totally dependent on it.
yeah, I think that's gonna be an issue, right? I remember, when like, parents would kind of come to me and they can complain, hey, you're not teaching our children long division anymore. And I would say, well, they don't need to know long division anymore. We got machines to that. There's other things that they need to learn. So I always took that attitude. Yeah, if a machine can do something for you, let it. And that frees us to do something better. Right, so that's kind of the way I'd like to see this go, right? Have you got some more comments? Yeah.
I've read that AI is terrible with math.
Yes, this is parable of math, because if you ask it, okay, what's 9/5 times 20 plus 32? It can easily answer that question. Why? Because that's a conversion from Celsius to Fahrenheit, and that's in printed text all over the place, right? But if you ask it, what's 9/7 times 20 plus 32, it can't figure it out. Nobody's ever written that. Nobody's ever written that down, right? So the new models are actually going to be enhanced to be able to do math as well. But, yeah, these right now are language models. That's all they do. Yeah, good question. Okay, anybody have anything more about the jobs thing? I think the jobs thing is absolutely fascinating. Yeah.
This is an extension of what we've been going through since the start of the Industrial Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
Technology comes along, it displaces people, it forces them to do more, create more productive jobs in other sectors it creates. Balloons come along and people stop weaving and learn to become engineers. And my recently retired career in engineering, and my freshman year in college, I spent learning how to run a drawing board, learning how to keep my pencil sharp and engineering drawings, and I learned how to become a master of the slide. Virginia Tech outlawed you couldn't have a calculator.
Yeah.
Because it gave you unfair advantage. But
Oh, yeah.
programmable calculators, you had to pull the batteries out and kill the volatile memory. Nowadays, I think they give you a programmable calculator on your first freshman day in college in engineering school.
Oh, yeah, yeah. See, I remember my first day in engineering school. I was right up there in the in the front row, right? I had my slide rule all tuned up and greased up, and perfectly calibrated. I was ready to go, right? The professor stomps into the room, looks at me, says, "Put that toy away. This is a mathematics class." Yeah, so, but the deal is, I mean, this all sounds great, but it's happening so fast, right? People, it's gonna be really hard for people to retrain themselves to be artificial intelligence engineers when they've been doing the job for a long time. That's what a lot of things, what happened with the industrialization, like the change from human workers to robots in the factories, right? Yeah, it was really a positive thing. It's made for better, cheaper cars and makes us all richer. But people who had spent their whole lives working in a car factory just didn't know what to do. Right? Didn't know what to do. So that was hard for them to do. We didn't take care of our own people. You know, we didn't think about, you know, what are folks going to do, right? A lot of folks should have been retired at an early age, right? Just give an early retirement. If you're like 50 years old, you've been working your whole life as driving bolts into a Ford F-150, right? What are you going to do? You're gonna retrain yourself as a software engineer? No. May as well say, hey, this person is a veteran. This person is a veteran of the information of the industrial age, right? They worked really hard and they did their part to bring us where they are. Let's put them out to pasture and let them enjoy the rest of their lives, right? So I think probably something like that, you'll see things along that. You know, Elon Musk was a big political supporter, before he went wacko, was a big political supporter of Andrew Yang, whose big thing was this like universal basic income. And I'm very partial to that idea because it's if everybody is guaranteed enough income to live kind of a basic life, then it's going to take a lot of pressure off when you're just throwing people out of jobs. Instead of protecting jobs, we need to be protecting people and let the jobs be changing, because that's how society gets better, when jobs change. That's kind of been my attitude towards this. Right? Okay, so something to think about. But anyway, we're talking major disruption here. Right? To me, there's absolutely no doubt that AI is and will continue to become a major disruptive force. Right? Now, whether you think that's good, is a question. But I think since it's going to happen, we may as well see it as good, and we may as well make it good, because there's no way we can control it. But people in a certain sense are trying to control it. Okay. Let's think about some of the other things that people are worried about. Yo,
Just to correct, if you heard me,
Yeah.
Nancy was correct. Class was scheduled to end at 11:15.
oh, okay. Oh,
I
okay.
hate to leave right now. but-
Oh, man, I was just, you had me so juiced. You had me so juiced that I had till 11:30. Ah, man.
It's so good.
Thank you.
See you next week.
Okay, well, there's other things that people are worried about, and people are beginning to enter the process of like trying to figure out how to control this stuff. Right? But it's really going to be hard to control because there's so many different actors, right? We would really need a powerful, effective world government to control this thing, or we need to get all the different countries to say, yeah, this is an issue, we got to control it. And we're kind of not there yet. So it's going to be really difficult to control this. But so my next talk is going to be, let's live with it. If you can't beat them, join them, is the title of the second part of that. How do we actually live with this and make AI be a creative tool that enhances our ability to do so. So thanks, everybody. This is really cool. I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to mention one
Yeah.
thing. In this latest issue of Time Magazine,
Uh-huh.
the cover story is the use of AI in the Ukraine war.
Yeah.
How the AI companies, American primarily, have been assisting Ukraine from the very beginning and how effective it's been against the Russians.
Yeah, who ever thought that a country like Ukraine could stand up to Russia? But they did. And why? But they use technology, very creative, yeah. Yeah, I guess, hey, if you don't feel like leaving, I'm not going anywhere until I kick me out, okay, yeah.
Or to maybe using AI for the good, like
Uh-huh.
for example, the water table problem in the US.
Uh-huh,
Okay, we've
Yeah.
almost used all the water below ground in the US. And then the plastics problem, all the plastics floating in the ocean. And why are we still allowing the use of plastic? So I hope we get more of that.
yeah, AI is really empowering a lot of science right now, especially biological science, right? But what you're talking about, plastic in the oceans, that needs human cooperation. Human cooperation. There was a quote that I really can't look up, but I think it was from like the leading Muslim religious leader in Sarajevo when it was under this terrible attack during the war that they had there. He said, the future belongs neither to the strong nor to the weak, but to the cooperative. We have to learn to cooperate to deal with problems like this, problems with plastic in the ocean, and we can do it. We're capable of that as a species.
As soon as we teach them math,
What?
as soon as we teach the machines math.
But the machines can learn math, that's not a problem. That's not an issue.
Thank you so much, I really enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I got distracted from finishing up, but I got another week. So I'll see all the guys next week, right? Well, my hope is that I haven't bored you so much that you won't show up next week. If I've accomplished that, then I'm a happy guy. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Hilarious.
So that's in March. Oh, very far away.
Not that far.
Hey, thank you for all the good comments. That's excellent.
This week, I just want to hear about read for the bad things you can do with AI.
The bad things. Oh, okay, yeah,
That should be easy.
that should be easy. I got lots of those slides I didn't get to yet. Yeah, Yeah.
Where it should be.
Okay, you got the illegal killing machine.
Yeah,
I think about it makes it more easier.
yeah. Yeah. But that's where we need human.
I'm talking about the law. I say we need to
Yeah.
have some. There's some laws in place like they have in medicine, so you can't do this.
Where they have where?
In the medical field.
In the medical field, yeah.
Experiments you can't do on human beings.
Good for me to stop the,
Yeah.
okay.
You're telling me I have to retire my slide rule? No. It's so much fun. What kind do you have? What kind of slide rule do you have? Oh, yeah, what was the brand? It was like, I had the big like orange metal ones I used to have.